So hi, I'm Stu Olden.
And I'm Georgina Wilson Ayalara. And together we present Advance to Contract, the podcast series where we explore how SMEs can break into, engage with and secure contracts in the UK defence sector.
So join us as we share insights, strategies and real-world experiences to help you navigate this very complex but at the same time rewarding market.
Hello, and thank you for joining us for the very first episode of Advance to Contract. Before we get started, a little about us.
Hi Georgina. So introducing you, you bring over a decade of experience in business development, capture management and strategic engagement across defence and adjacent sectors. You've helped organisations navigate complex procurement landscapes, shape winning value propositions and build meaningful partnerships. You've been doing a lot. You're passionate about using that experience to help small and medium-sized enterprises understand how to engage early and secure their first defence contract, which is handy for this podcast.
It is, isn't it? Well placed. Yeah, I didn't just get off at the bus stop and see you're looking here.
You know, your passion about helping SMEs, where did that come from?
Well, it started when I was at beforehand, but I was at PwC as a pursuit coach, and I was very fortunate to be a part of the Scale Up programme.
Right.
So actually providing pursuit coaching to SMEs across defence and other adjacent sectors. And it was brilliant to see how important each contract win was and the impact that had in terms of their growth and
so gaining
technology.
confidence.
Yeah, definitely.
Excellent.
Yeah. Thank you, Stu. And Stu is the founder of SDO Associates. He spent 24 years in the army as an engineering soldier and officer, and worked in the procurement areas of the Ministry of Defence, liaising closely with industry to bring equipment into service.
Yeah,
very important for the
absolutely.
MOD.
Yeah.
In his industry career, he has worked in both consultancy and product-based organisations delivering defence capability. And in his current role as CEO of SDO Associates, he advises SMEs on defence market entry, campaign planning and growth strategies, with a focus on enabling capability innovation and delivery of sovereign capability.
Sounds a lot in there.
It really does, yeah. Important stuff.
So let's get into it. So this podcast is designed for the SME, small and medium enterprise. And that's not only just those who've been working in defence, but also those that perhaps haven't worked in defence, but have got a really good dual use case technology that we can bring into defence and it can add value. So we're going to be talking about how these organisations can sort of understand and navigate what really is quite a complex, but at the same time rewarding market. Whether you're an established engineering firm or just a tech startup exploring defence for the first time, we'll share insights, strategies and lessons learned to help you succeed.
Sounds great. So across the series, we'll cover topics that matter the most to SMEs.
Great, a lot to cover.
Yeah, a lot.
So our goal is simple, really, to give you the knowledge and confidence to advance from opportunity to contract. So let's get into it.
Okay, so welcome to episode 1, The Gatekeepers and the Gate. In episode 1 of our podcast series today, we explore the journey of entering the defence sector as a small medium enterprise. Today, we're setting the scene with a foundational question. Why is that first contract so hard to achieve? For many SMEs, breaking into defence can feel like standing on the edge of a vast, complex landscape full of opportunity, but also full of unknowns. The barriers to entry are real, from understanding where to start, to knowing who to engage with, how to align our capabilities with what defence actually needs.
And in this episode, we will also unpack the common challenges SMEs face when trying to win their first defence contract. We'll talk about how to prepare for market entry, how to speak the language of defence, and why building the right relationships is just as important as having the right product or service. So, whether you're just starting out or looking to sharpen your approach, this episode is your first step in crossing the threshold into defence.
Great. So to set the scene, what are the two gatekeepers into defence? breaking into defence isn't just about luck, it's about knowing who and which gate to approach. For SMEs, there are two main gates, one marked business to business and one marked public procurement. And in this episode, we'll explore both gateways, who controls access, how to get noticed, and what practical steps help you move from interest to contract.
So firstly, we're going to look at the first route, business to business. In other words, working with those gatekeepers and finding out who holds the keys to the defence work and how SMEs can actually get on those individuals' radar. So let's talk about the real gatekeepers in defence. These are the organisations and individuals who shape the supply chain and decide who gets brought in.
So should we start with the primes?
Yep.
The big players. So the likes of BAE Systems, Babcock, Thales, Leonardo and Lockheed Martin. These hold the lion's share of MOD contracts. They're not just delivering capability, they're shaping the supply chain. And for most SMEs, the first MOD contract won't come directly from the MOD. It'll come through one of these primes or tier one subcontractors. So, Stu, it'd be interesting to know from your experience in business development and your point of view, how can SMEs actually get noticed by these big players?
Yeah, sure. So perhaps if I give an example. So let's take Thales, for example. We all know they lead major programs in sensors, communications, mission systems, but they don't really do everything in-house. They're an integrator. So they rely on a network of tier one and tier two suppliers to deliver those specialist capabilities they need to integrate. So anything from software and electronics to advanced materials and mechanical systems. So the key is getting into organisations like that and providing the capabilities into them that they need.
I see what you mean. So the mid-tiers, subcontractors and their supply chains, if we just take a moment to look at those as well. So this is where SMEs can find the real opportunity. Let's say you're an SME with expertise in thermal management or lightweight composite structures. You may not be bidding directly to Thales, as Stu just highlighted, but you could be brought in by a tier one integrator working on a Thales-led program, for example, supplying composite housings or cooling systems for a naval sensor suite. One example is an SME that entered the supply chain by responding to a capability gap identified by a tier one supplier working under Thales. They provided a bespoke composite enclosure that met strict weight and thermal requirements. That engagement started with a conversation, an industry event, and a strong capture followed by a tailored capability statement and a technical workshop, and led to a prototype order and an eventual low-rate initial production.
So let's look at the influencers inside the system. Then there are a lot of influencers behind the scene. So when you engage with an organisation like Thales, it's not just the business developers that you talk to. You really want to be starting to talk to the senior engineers, the program managers, the SME champions, and most importantly, the supply chain leads inside the primes and mid-tiers that you want to get engaged with. So these are the people who shape the requirements. They influence supplier selection internal to the organisation, and they'll actually advocate for new entrants. They're not always visible, but they're often the ones who'll say, let's bring this SME in, let's give them a chance. So the connecting with them really requires targeted networking. And that means attending the right events and using platforms like LinkedIn and ADS, the trade body, to build visibility and trust in your organisation. You may also have to get yourself registered on their supplier list, which is not done lightly, but something that's we'll cover in a later episode.
So positioning for the supply chain, so look at and ask ourselves, how do SMEs position themselves to be a part of this ecosystem? It's a really important question. So one key area is the capability statements, as Stu highlighted it earlier. For the Thales example, these need to be concise, maximum 6 slides, tailored to defence, and aligned to programme needs and focused on outcomes. So it's not just selling our capability, but actually how does that help the customer?
Absolutely.
We talk also about readiness, don't we, Stu? So SMEs need to demonstrate the ability to deliver, to make it tangible, tangible benefits. So from concept to prototype and then to low rate production. Compliance, you'll need to demonstrate that you have already or have a pathway to securing the right accreditations, looking at ISO 9001, Cyber Essentials, JOSCAR, and be procurement ready. Security clearance is also important. So although maybe not straight away, again, having a pathway to achieve that and submitting that as a part of the bid or procurement activity, it's a good idea to understand how you're going to get security clearance for key personnel to have BPSS or higher, depending on the project sensitivity.
Absolutely. I think getting those accreditations and security clearance really helps you to open that door. So, Georgina, you talk a lot about early engagement in your work, and when really do you think that SMEs should start the process of engagement before they've even been introduced to a prime? How do they do that?
Well, I think it's, as you said, isn't at those events or even before that, like the desktop research level, it is understanding those customer hot buttons. What is it that's keeping the primes or suppliers up at night in that full ecosystem? So understanding the customer hot buttons, what are their pain points, what are they trying to solve, using the stakeholder mapping analysis and engagement planning to really shape how you go out, or outreach rather, and influence procurement before it actually comes a formal tender. That's really important. And I think we'll be sharing a how-to guide on that, won't we, Stu?
Absolutely.
On stakeholder mapping and B2B engagement on the website. So keep a lookout for that.
Yeah, and I think that really means about doing your research before you go to these events. There's no point just turning up and trying to talk to people straight away.
Yeah, definitely.
So, Georgina, if you could give one piece of advice to an SME trying to get into the supply chain, what do you think it would be?
So definitely to do the homework. And as we said, that could be right at the desktop study area or once you're out at the event, but really understanding the full ecosystem of who we're trying to target or get the relationship with. So understand what the prime is delivering and what the customer pain points are, and then really tailor all of the messaging and materials to that. And then to show, as we mentioned earlier, how to actually solve their problem, not just what you actually sell.
So, yeah, exactly. So it's not just about selling the latest widget. It's about understanding the other people's challenges.
Definitely, yeah. I'd be interested to know your thoughts, Stu. Where have you seen that working really well in your experience working with SMEs?
Yeah, sure. So, SMEs, by their definition, have a sort of niche capability that perhaps could fill a real gap for a tier one. They're very agile, they're dynamic, and I think the primes would agree that they're perhaps not that, and therefore that's what they're looking for from the SMEs. I was listening to a talk by MBDA yesterday at the Advanced Engineering Conference, where they were very much talking about that, how they want SMEs because they are agile, because they provide that ability to move quickly. So, if we take your previous example that talked about Italis and the specialist composite housing, that SME didn't go in there selling that particular product because they thought that was the answer. They went in there using it as an example of how they could benefit that organisation. So how they could help them solve a particular challenge quickly and more agile, perhaps than the prime could do internally. That led to that company getting a prototype, a small contract, which enables them to then get on the supply chain and get on their register. And then eventually it led to a low rate initial production program. So that proves that, slowly and gently proves the way. So that's it's really good.
That's very good. Yeah, very effective.
So let's move on to, how maybe we've talked about speaking to the primes and the tier ones. Let's look about how you might sell to the MOD as an SME. So what, as an SME, do you need to know when you're going to go and contact the MOD? Everyone talks about talking to the MOD, but what does that mean? Who is that? What's the face behind it? So as an SME, you want to talk to the MOD, but you don't quite know who to contact. So how do you get in contact with them? and how do you demonstrate your product offering? Very difficult to get behind the barbed wire basically of MOD. So let's talk about the MOD's commercial and procurement ecosystem and perhaps how SMEs can navigate that.
That sounds like our second gate, Stu.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So the second gate, public procurement, and it can look intimidating, and that's, as you mentioned, like the whole web of MOD commercial teams, DENS, the frontline commands, DASA, and now UK Defence Innovation. So I guess as we start to unpack this, Stu, it'd be good from your perspective to understand how SMEs can avoid being overwhelmed by such a vast web of players.
So I think it's really important to focus on what you're best at, what's your capability area, and where do you think that'll add value to defence. So if you're engineering focused, then perhaps as Abbey Wood, for those that don't know, is the centralised procurement organisation called Defence Equipment and Support down in Bristol. And that's very much engineering focused. So perhaps you need to go and talk to the stakeholders in there. The Ministry of Defence has a lot of frameworks that you can apply for. Most of them can be found online. One of those is the Engineering Delivery Partner Framework that you can get onto, and that supplies projects that you can get engaged with some other organisations, and that provides benefit as well by partnering with other organisations.
It's good. It's good to know. It sounds like there's a lot of different frameworks, isn't there, and different structures to it.
About 125, unfortunately, but there you go.
And counting.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And as we've touched on, early market engagement is here too. So attend the briefings, respond to the requests for information, requests, RFIs, talk to the MOD stakeholders before tendering goes live. And that way, in the capture phase, we can actually shape the requirements before they become a formal procurement system.
Still sounds like there's a lot to do.
It does, doesn't it? For us and the team. Yeah. So the MOD's procurement ecosystem, and we will, it's good to know, we will reference the MOD innovation landscape map, which does help to define and structure well the web that we're referring to.
We're going to put that in our downloads.
We are, yes. Yep. So supplying directly into the MOD means understanding how the MOD buys and who makes the decisions and where the opportunities are published. And at the heart of this is the MOD commercial, the formal authority managing procurement policy, frameworks and contracts. We've got the frontline commands as well from the Army, Navy and Air Force, who define the operational needs and then shape those requirements. And each has its own commercial teams and technical leads, which put that procurement together, feeding into the MOD commercial. There is the DENS, the Defence Equipment and Support. So this is the MOD's delivery arm, responsible for acquiring and supporting equipment and services. DENS manages many of the major programmes and frameworks SMEs will encounter. UK Defence Innovation, a recently stood up body under the Defence Industrial Strategy, focused at accelerating the adoption of new technologies. That's really key for SME community, isn't it? And then Commercial X, a newer initiative aimed at modernising defence procurement and engaging non-traditional suppliers. So all these bodies work together to deliver capability, but they operate through structured, policy-driven processes, which means SMEs need to be prepared and proactive.
Absolutely, and even over the last year, we've seen defence reform have changes in these areas as well, and a lot of these new organisations are standing up. So there's a lot of deck chairs moving around at the moment, and it's quite difficult for SMEs to understand where to go. So I think it'd be useful for us maybe to understand where these open procurement pathways are and how people can get engaged. We talked about all of the different organisations. So how do people find out where they can go to? Well, on the website, on the internet, there's a lot of references that you can go to. So a lot of the portals. So there's the Defence Sourcing Portal, or the DSP, for example. This is the MOD's central e-procurement hub. So you want to keep an eye on that for the latest MOD and government tenders. You need to be registered. It's free, so you can go on there and register yourself, and it'll also give you emails if you sign up for the notification service.
On that, Stu, are there any like SME, thinking from SME perspective, are there any like prerequisite to be able to register on the DSP? Or?
So no, the DSP,
okay.
you can just sign up.
That's really good then.
I think there's a clearance process behind it, but as long as you've got a correct domain name, you sign up for a password, and away you go.
Good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there are other portals as well. So Contracts Finder and Finder Tender Service. So there's two levels here. So Contracts Finder has opportunities over £12,000. That's inclusive of VAT. And Finder Tender Service has contracts over £140,000. So if you're looking for those smaller projects, then maybe Contracts Finder is the one for you. But for the larger programs, then the Finder Tender Service maybe. And then finally, there's the Defence and Security Accelerator, or DASA, as it's commonly known. They run a number of innovation calls. They're open and closed frameworks, they're called, or open and closed calls. And that's where they start to call for emerging technology that they want to see from SMEs. And then if you want to look ahead and see where MOD is planning and looking at where they want to bring in new equipment, then something called the MOD Acquisition Pipeline is a great tool. This lists over programs over £200 million. So maybe not quite in the SME ballpark, but it gives you visibility of what's coming from the MOD pipeline, and really allows you to shape your engagement activity that you might then do with the primes or tier ones.
That's very good. So if we move on to understanding the frameworks and dynamic purchasing systems, I think we see that, isn't it, as being the route to recurring success?
Yeah, absolutely. And you can sign, like you say, you can sign up to these and actually get emails into your inbox. So saves you time routing around the internet.
Yeah, it's very good. Yeah, good efficiency. So beyond open tenders, the MOD increasingly uses frameworks, as Stu highlighted, and dynamic purchasing systems to streamline their procurement. And these include the Engineering Delivery Partner, a DE&S framework for pre-qualified engineering suppliers. There's a Crown Commercial Services, covering a wide range of technical and professional services. And then the R-Cloud, so that's DSTL's research framework for R&D.
And DSTL is the Defence Scientific and Technology Laboratory.
Okay,
so there you go. More acronyms.
More acronyms in the dictionary. So getting onto these frameworks can be a game changer. I'm sure you've seen that with your SME clients, Stu.
Yeah.
And it means you're already approved and can be invited to bid on what work hits as the market progresses.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Opens.
Yeah, often you see opportunities coming down on those portals that you can start to apply to and start to look at forming consortia to actually respond to them. So we talked about a lot of procurement routes, pathways, organisations, but it does take time. There's no getting away from that. But it is worth it, as you said, Georgina. It's worth getting onto these frameworks so that you can understand what's coming down the line. Because often if you wait for tenders to come out, then it's too late. You need to be engaging with organisations straight off. So as I said, let's be honest, public procurement takes a long time. There are formal processes. We're dealing with the public purse after all. So there has to be compliance checks and assurance requirements. But the upside is it's strategic, it's scalable, and once you're on it, then it can be quite lucrative. And therefore, getting onto long-term programs can be a good revenue stream for your organisation. So if you're just starting out, my advice or our advice would basically be don't go for that £10 million contract straight away. Start looking for those smaller contracts. So start looking on things like Contracts Finder, Finder Tender Service, Defence Sourcing Portal, and start looking for those smaller tens of thousands of pound opportunities. These are things like short-term trials with primes and tier ones that you can do some R&D and get your credibility known by these organisations, and they're ideal for building your credibility, as I said, but proving the capability that you're offering and just getting your foot in the door.
Yeah, definitely. I like that. And as soon as you said that, comes on to another episode, doesn't it, about case studies and the importance of
Absolutely.
getting those.
Yeah.
But we won't spoil that surprise just yet.
Leave that one.
Leave that one. So I suppose in terms of, I guess, a final thought and reflection goes on to like shaping the requirements. So I think for us, that's a real game changer, isn't it? Is the ability to be involved in early market engagement to
Absolutely.
shape the requirement. And as we've already touched on, that looks at attending industry briefings, responding to our RFIs, requests for information, and engaging with MOD stakeholders early before the requirement is locked in. The MOD is under pressure to engage with SMEs early on in the process, even as before a PIN notice is released. So that means there's space to influence and shape the procurement decision makers, etc. But you need to be visible, credible, and ready to deliver and respond to that phase of the process. And we will be sharing a how-to guide, won't we, Stu, on that, which will be on the website in terms of how the SME map and stakeholders, how SMEs can understand hot buttons and translate that into their touch points with the customer and shape their strategy for MOD engagement.
Yep.
So it's really good actually, Stu, to think about that requirements, because I think that those are really important, aren't they, from the very beginning all the way through to delivery. So before it's written down, but once the tender is live, what in your view makes a bid stand out?
Yeah, sure. Obviously, the first point is answer the question. So often missed, but be clear in how you're structuring it and make sure you are answering the question that's been asked. Clarity, and you talked about case studies. That's how you get your credibility. So even if you don't have case studies from the current sector, from the defence sector, you might be coming from automotive, motorsport, oil and gas, healthcare. You will have case studies that resonate with the defence sector and can be translated. So think about those as well. Second point, don't overpromise. Don't say you can do things if you can't, because you will get found out. So focus on the outcomes of how your solution can help defence meet its objectives. Really hone in on that question. And make it easy for evaluators to mark the bid by structuring it in the way that the question is asked. So ask each point of the question in order. And if you're new, as we've said before, start small. Go for those small feasibility studies. The Defence and Security Accelerator has some really good opportunities around 50, 100k, 200k. That you can get, cut your teeth in defence on, and they're a really a good organisation to engage with. But yeah, make sure you build your track record up before going for that multi-million-pound contract.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, so question for you then, Georgina. So one thing I've seen a lot really is, and especially in the early stage SMEs as they're engaging in defence, is everyone's saying the same thing. We're innovative, we're agile, we're great value. Yeah. It's not really a USP from my mind. So from a business development perspective, that language starts to fall flat a bit. So how would you then start to engage with an organisation using your USPs?
So I think it comes back to that understanding the hot buttons and the customer's priorities and
so solving their challenge.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Yeah, and understanding the challenge, isn't it? So it takes some time and effort put into some workshops to understand the customer's ecosystem and what system they're operating in, what challenges they have. So maybe it's operational, commercial, right? But understanding those challenges and then showing that you understand that throughout all the customer touch points. So whether it's at the supplier day or an engagement, a different event, being able to talk, as you mentioned, the customer's language, so it can be easily relatable. But yeah, backing it up with something tangible.
Okay, great. So we talked about those case studies and sort of talking the language, meeting the touch points, but again, SMEs sometimes find it really difficult to differentiate themselves. If they're a 3D printer, for example, a precision engineering manufacturer, there's quite a lot of those organisations around. So every competitor claims the same qualities. So what makes the MOD or a prime or a tier one really sit up and say, like that's different?
So I think it's a really good question, isn't it? I think it's all about making that evidence align with impact. So as we've, I think, touched on, really two key threads of our podcast so far is that evidence and impact. So being able to understand all of what's going on in the customer's ecosystem, and then turning that into, well, as an SME, what can we do? So whether it's the composite, understanding that's like a gap for the customer, and then how we can feed into that. I think that's like really important, and not just claiming innovation, but backing it up with a claim. So our approach reduced system downtime by 30%, as an example, or our agility meant the prototype was ready 6 weeks early. So it's quantifiable, and then again, always aligning it to the customer's priorities. I think it's good to highlight that's where capture and business development really come together, as you build the insight early and then translate that into the bid and the story in the bid submission.
So it's not just about having a great product, it's also about proving how you can add value to your end customer.
Yes.
You can have the best thing, but if that customer is not looking for it, then they're not going to buy it at the end of the day.
Definitely. Exactly. The strongest bids come from those who've been actively listening.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on. So far we've talked about engaging with the big players, what we call the primes or tier ones, navigating the MOD's formal procurement system, which can be quite scary at times. But what happens if you want to do both? What happens if you want to take a hybrid approach as an SME and maybe sort of start to engage with both those organisations? So let's break it down. So business to business and MOD, two routes, but maybe one strategy in terms of business development. So here's the core question that we're asking is, how do business to business and public procurement routes complement each other? Well, I think the answer is that they're really not competing paths. They're mutually reinforcing. So many SMEs start by supplying into a prime supply chain, for example, maybe as a tier 2 or a tier 3 supplier. So that's lower down the supply chain. And they're delivering a niche capability, a component or a subsystem in a major system, like thermal management. We've talked about composite structures, for example, or maybe electronic control systems. This is helping to really build the credibility of that SME and build the credibility in the sector that they're operating. It's showing their experience and it's delivering defence relevant references. We talked about having case studies before. We're now building case studies in the defence sector through those small programs. And it's also helping them to understand the landscape, that commercial landscape. Often you can have a great technical product, but perhaps you haven't got the commercial offering that the organisation is looking at. So we're talking about accreditations, we're talking about standards, we're talking about speaking the language, as you said earlier, Georgina. They're now in a stronger position by understanding the MOD's pathway and understanding the prime's pathway, and therefore, they might be doing those smaller projects that are enabling them to build those case studies.
And Stu, it's really good to summarise and be, I think, in that the ability to do the B2B and public procurement route as well, as I think it's complementary. From your business development point of view, how can SMEs make the most of this experience and use what they've learned in the supply chain to strengthen their positioning with the MOD?
Yeah, so I think, like anything, it's all about gathering that intelligence. Understanding the market that you operate in is key, and we've seen even over the last year the MOD landscape is changing quite rapidly with everything that's going on in the world. We're starting to support. Well, we have been supporting for a while. Ukraine. We're starting to look at how our defence strategy and our positioning should perhaps change in the light of what's going on over there. So, I think the key thing is to keep talking to people, keep engaging. Communication is key. Talk to the defence programme managers. We've talked about defence equipment and support. Try and get in there and talk to the delivery teams, talk to the engineering leads. What are their challenges and problems? How can you help them to mitigate those? And also how those challenges are filtering down through the supply chain. So perhaps the MOD has placed a problem statement on a prime or a tier 1. That tier 1 maybe has part of the solution, but it doesn't have the whole solution. So where can you position yourself in that supply chain? We've already talked about getting ahead of the tender, so making sure you're there when the program, and most importantly the money lands. So that's key, and then really use that insight that you've built up to, as you've said, Georgina, map out your targets and have that landscape sort of mapped out, even if it's scribbled on a notepad. Understand who the enablers are, understand who the blockers are, and understand who you should be talking through, whether that's through the MOD or through the primes and tier ones.
And that's very good, and leads us very nicely on to our next section of the podcast, isn't it? Which is combining that intelligence with engagement. So here's how to make that hybrid model work. So
Hopefully.
using, hopefully, fingers crossed. Based on intelligence. So using that business to business relationship to gather intelligence, as you mentioned. So as you mentioned, talking to the program managers, engineering leads, and supply chain contacts inside primes. What are they hearing from the MOD? What problems are they trying to solve, and what's coming down their pipeline? So that's a key underpin of that hybrid strategy, isn't it?
Yep.
Using the MOD platforms to gain visibility, as we mentioned earlier about the acquisition pipeline, being able to register on the DSP, monitor the acquisition pipeline, and attend early market engagement events and regional defence and security cluster events as well.
Yeah, we haven't talked about the RDSCs yet. I think they're critical under the new regime. The regional defence and security clusters, or RDSCs, as you said, are proving their worth in terms of bringing together organisations at a regional level. And often companies work best when they're in a geographic co-located position. So, that really helps to boost that local economy, boost relationships between those organisations, and hopefully provide a capability back up the chain.
I think you're supporting the drone work in Swindon as well, aren't you?
Swindon is becoming the centre of drones at the moment. So, it's really exciting.
Very. And helps you understand what's being procured when and by whom. And thirdly, feeding insights from one route into the other. As we touched on, it is complementary. So if you hear about a capability gap from a prime, check if the MOD are funding it through the innovation in that area. And if you see a tender on DSP, ask your B2B contacts if they're bidding and whether you can support.
Key. Yeah, absolutely. So I think you've just come back round to what we talked about before, about this stakeholder mapping. Who are the enablers, who are the blockers, perhaps, that you need to go around and find somebody else to support your engagement. That's essential. So you're not just tracking organisations that we've identified that may be suitable to be delivering this capability for an MOD's program, but we're also tracking people. To my mind, people buy from people. It's about relationships. So who's influencing those decisions? Who are the decision makers? Who shapes that requirement, and who can back you? Who can say, we really like this organisation, they've got a great product, I think we should be using it. So how do you go on this journey to building relationships? So building those B2B relationships really gives you access, insight, and credibility. You can look on the defence sourcing portals, but it's words on a website. Having a conversation with a person and having those questions answered, hopefully that you're going to pose, helps you to build that knowledge. And also from the MOD perspective, having visibility of what's coming down the pipeline gives you the ability to plan in your business. We all need to plan as SMEs. We all need to understand how we're going to pay the wages month from month. So it gives you the ability to scale, structure, and really understand what those strategic opportunities are for you in your pipeline. And together, both those relationships and that visibility really start to form a sustainable entry strategy into the defence sector. One that balances short-term wins with long-term growth.
That's very good. That's very powerful. And so I guess thinking of that mini case study, starting small and thinking big. As an example, let's say you're an SME with a very novel composite solution. You could start by supplying the tier one working under Thales, for example. Maybe a bespoke housing for their sensor system. And that gets you noticed, recognised, gets you the case studies, relationships, network, etc. And then next you respond to a DASA call focused on lightweight structures for unscrewed platforms. You win a 90k feasibility study, and now you've got MOD funding, a prime relationship, and a defence relevant case study.
Yeah,
that's the wow factor.
Sounds like you're going to be busy though.
That is true.
So
Yep.
I think there's a risk here, isn't there, that SMEs can run around and try and do everything and maybe not achieve anything. So, when you're chasing primes, you're trying to find this market intelligence, you're chasing the tenders, you're looking on portals, you're seeing which frameworks you should sign up to and putting all the paperwork together to do that. How do you avoid spreading yourself too thin?
Yeah, that is the challenge of it, isn't it? I think it all comes down to that focus, and as you said, being intentional, purposeful, and having it maybe backed up with evidence, really. So yeah, definitely engage through both routes, but every activity has to link back to that core capability and the growth plan,
absolutely
backed up by like the acquisition plan or some form of evidence on the market, etc. And if it doesn't align with what you do best or who you serve best, it's a distraction. It's not worth progressing at this stage. And capture planning can help you prioritize where to invest that effort.
Yeah. We always talk to clients about following a campaign plan. Really identify not just that you're going to go and do business development in the defence sector, but where in the defence sector. Are you going to target unmanned systems? Are you going to target electrification of platforms? That gives you that focus.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. So when, I guess on that note then, Stu, like when have you seen SMEs get this hybrid model right? And what have they done differently to make that happen?
Yeah, so I think starting small, starting focused, and building your engagement and your relationships, bit by bit. I think I've seen a lot of organisations, as we call it, do the spray and pray business development stuff where you try and be all things to all people and go and speak to everybody. Unfortunately, you end up running around and maybe not achieving what you need to. So, maybe an SME might start to have a niche component that they think is really critical for a particular tier one program. They start to talk to that organisation. They build the trust, the credibility, the relationship, and then perhaps that prime at that time says, "Well, that's great, but we don't have a program of opportunity at the moment. We don't have the funding." So that organisation goes off and speaks to DASA. It goes and goes and hopefully picks up a research and development program that can use it as a prototype feasibility study, prove their worth, provide that information and report back to the prime that then shows that prime that they're keen to engage, and they've gone off and used their initiative and gone and got a smaller project. So I think that says a lot.
Yeah, it does. It's like building that business case, isn't it, for them?
Absolutely. Yeah. So they're really connecting the dots there. They're proving their credibility. They're providing visibility to the prime, and they're also understanding what's coming down the line from the MOD.
Yeah, that's great. It sounds powerful stuff. Yeah. And at the heart of that sounds like the relationships that give you access. Definitely relationships give you access and intelligence, and public procurement is structured so that it also can help scale as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, start small.
Yeah.
And you then combine those smaller projects, and then you've got that, as we referred to it earlier, that sustainable entry strategy, and you've got those case studies. So yeah, let's talk about how you network then. Let's talk about networking with intent. Have a plan and how you actually start to build that trust across both the MOD and the B2B access routes.
Yeah, definitely. So, Stu, we both know that defence is very relationship heavy and relationship driven sector, but networking can feel overwhelming for SMEs. So from your experience, what does networking with intent actually look like in practice?
Yeah. Okay, great question. How long have we got?
Mm.
Right. So,
Full episode.
so I think preparation is key.
Yeah.
You need to plan. You can't just turn up to a networking session and hope to have those great conversations. So know who's going to be there, know who's going to be attending.
Mm-hmm.
So whether you're approaching the primes or going to an MOD networking session, defence. Let's be honest, is a relationship-driven sector. People like to deal with the people that they know.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Unfortunately, it's a lot of grey beards and grey-haired people and people with less hair than I have, which is saying something, talking to each other. So, if you're going to network, do it with purpose. I think, as I said before, firstly, ditch the scattergun approach. No spray and pray. Build that engagement plan. Understand who your targets are and who your ideal customer profiles are. That's key against your campaign plan. We talk about having a prospect list. You don't need hundreds of prospects to go after. Defence, after all, is quite a small sector. So 20, 30 prospects can give you a lot of return on investment. So know who you're going to speak to and start to target those organisations and people. And I would suggest also that the roles of those people are key as well. It doesn't often end well when salespeople talk to salespeople. They both want to sell things.
Yeah.
So start to talk to the procurement team. Start to talk to the engineering teams that have got that problem. And understand where you fit. So are you aligned best to a company that deals with soldier systems, land platforms? Are you an AI and digital based organization? So look at perhaps Lockheed Martin, for example, may not be for you. If you are purely focused on composite solutions, for example. So look at which organisations best fit you, and then look at your networks. You'll be surprised to see how many people you actually know, and start to not only personally, but have a look at your LinkedIn profile. You're linked in with quite a lot of people, so start to use that. Also, start to use organisations such as ADS, so the Aerospace Defence Security and Space Trade Body. Make UK Defence or another one. Team Defence Information, Tech UK. There's a lot of these guys out there. So try and speak to them and how they can help you to make those relationships. And we've said it before, but make sure you are connected with your regional defence and security cluster. There's lots of them being stood up across the country. So make sure you're linked in. And then finally, really, track everything. There's no point going out there and having conversations if you're not tracking it, because if anything like me, I'll forget it.
Yeah, if it's not written down.
Exactly. So, we all talk about CRM systems. You don't have to have a fancy Salesforce. You could have a spreadsheet, but make sure you're logging it.
Yeah. So it comes back to your being intentional.
Absolutely.
And then the so what does that mean?
Yeah. Georgina, you've mentioned before the importance of this 12 to 18 month engagement plan, and we've talked about that. So how should SMEs decide which events? There's multitude of events that you could attend, which forums, which associations, which trade bodies, are actually worth their time, and which ones they might just skip.
I think it's a really good question, isn't it? I think, like you said, the defence cluster is really important to get that ground level information. I think it all goes back down to that stakeholder map. Firstly, being able to look at what it is you want to get from it, and then working from there. I think the RDSCs are really good for wide networking, because you don't know, you don't tend to know who you're going to meet first off. So perhaps you can go along in there and speak to a few people, and also speak to other SMEs who may be having the same issues and challenges as you, and you'll learn a lot from them. Yep. It goes back to, I think, not selling, but actually listening, isn't it? And being able to go to those events and listen to what's going on.
Absolutely.
And bringing that information back into the team and looking at so what. So I guess from your view, Stu, how do you help teams reframe those conversations to get that information that's needed?
Yeah,
To talk about solving a customer's problems instead of just pitching capability all the time.
yeah. I think again, we keep on repeating it, but it's about research and listening. So, example were we had recently was a client who at a trade show went onto a stand and literally started the sales pitch, and got out the brochure and said, this is what we can do, without perhaps listening to the individual as to what their pain point was. And you could immediately see the shutters go down. You could see the body language change. So I think the most important thing is do your research first, even if it's just looking at their website. Talk the language, make them understand that you've actually done some research on an organisation and you've taken interest in them. And then you can start to drop in those words from their website that make them think that you have done your research and you do know about the organisation. And ask them questions. Often if you ask people about what's important to them, it will naturally lead around to something that you can engage with within your organisation. But don't start with a sales pitch.
It's good one. And I guess in terms of being able to feed directly into our capture planning and that effort, what do you think SMEs can learn from those conversations that help shape the future bids and partnerships they may need in the future?
Yeah, so I think in terms of shaping those bids, it's about building you talked about partnerships. It's about building the relationship with other organisations. These days, not many organisations can deliver a programme on their own. They need to partner. Even big organisations like the BAEs, the Thalases, the Leonardos, they all need to partner with organisations. So think about where you fit in that consortia and where you can add value, and start talking to the people that are in those organisations about what's coming down the pipeline. We talk about it all the time, but get out there and talk to people. You can't do business development behind a laptop.
Need to look at the whites of the eyes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
No, it's good. Yeah, no, I like that. And it just gives more and more emphasis to the importance of capture planning, isn't it? Like you said at the beginning, to have that foresight as well, which is good.
Yeah, and I think it helps you to build that, what we term the black book. Your relationships. You talked about that stakeholder map, and the CRM system. That is your black book.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to our next segment then, in terms of that black book and the reality of who you know and building that black book, as it were. So a wrap up with the importance and I guess the awareness that it's often whispered but rarely said aloud, that in defence it's who you know and what really matters, as you said. And yes, there are the formal tenders, and yes, there are frameworks, but the reality is that success often hinges on that informal influence, which we find on a daily basis, don't we, Stu?
Yeah, absolutely.
Those quiet conversations, the early interactions and introductions, the people who say you should talk to this person and that. And that's why you need to build the relationships early, long before a requirement is published. And if you're waiting for the tender to drop, you're already
too late
for the party.
Yeah.
So we've talked about networking with intent, Stu, but this is the part people often whisper about in defence. Who you know matters.
Yeah, it really does.
Why do you think relationships are so powerful in this market?
So yeah, I come back to the point of people buy from people. I was talking to somebody the other day that said, unfortunately, the sort of, there's quite a lot of business developers in this market that are ex-military, and just sort of having that ability to open a conversation and link with somebody about a mutual relationship or something that you may have had in the past. So if you can talk from a military point of view, that's great. If you don't have that experience, don't worry, you're not cut out of the defence sector. That's not a problem. But try and find something that you can talk about on a personal basis to that individual. Look at their LinkedIn profile. You must be able to engage with something on their LinkedIn profile. Again, don't go in for that immediate sell, but ask them, how their last tennis match was, because they've put that they like playing tennis on their LinkedIn profile. Sounds silly, but it builds that relationship and people engage that way. So you mentioned the black book and the personal network that really does open doors, and we've all had it. People ask us for references and for introductions, and that's what's key. And I think if you can do that for people, then they'll naturally feed that back. What goes around comes around, basically.
Definitely.
So if you don't have that black book, get to know somebody who does, and use their relationships to get in, and start to build that trust through communication and the relationships that you build. So I think it comes to that time where we look back what we've actually covered, which is a lot. So in this episode, we've explored both gateways. We've explored working through industry partners. We've talked about bidding directly to the MOD, and how this word trust, relationship, communication really, really does matter. So we talked about the gatekeepers, the people who open doors, the enablers, people that will vouch for you and will get you in the door. We talked about the gate, which is the systems, the processes that you need to navigate, things like the portals and the frameworks that you need to be aware of and engage with. And really, you do need, as the title said of the episode, you need the gatekeeper and you need the gate, and you need to do both well. So I think the hybrid approach is how you approach that. And whether you enter through the gate or the gatekeeper, the journey really does start with the people and the targeted, relevant communication that you make with those people. So.
Yep. I think based on trust, isn't it? Trust as a currency, really, in this market.
Yeah. So, Georgina, I think, to sort of continue the wrapping up of this episode, it really is all about consistency. Not only do you need to build relationships and record that in your black book and build the black book, you need to have a good CRM system, whether that's a spreadsheet or whether that's Salesforce or HubSpot, but you need to record that, and you need to start making that stakeholder map. So you need so you can understand who those gatekeepers are, and who's on your side that can get into that organization. That enables you to gain that credibility, build those relationships, hopefully identify opportunities and the ability to supply in proposals for small projects. That gives you small wins. That enables you to build case studies. So you can already see that we're starting to make our way into the defence sector, and we're now building those partnerships and building our performance and credibility. So from your perspective, Georgina, and you do a lot on capture planning and bidding and bid management, how do those early relationships influence a company's ability to actually win those opportunities later on?
Well, that as you said, that they're critical, because by the time the tender lands, as we've established on the portal, the best suppliers already understand the customer's problem, priorities and the pain points. So if by the time the formal procurement is out and the SME or the prospective supplier doesn't understand those, it's already a very low.
Too late.
It's too late. Too late. So those insights shape our win themes, our messaging, and even the pricing strategy and commercial solution. So if you're building relationships early, you're effectively shaping the opportunity before it comes to competition. We'll be sharing a stakeholder mapping toolkit on our website to help SMEs plan engagement across both routes, so keep an eye out for that. So if we're being honest, success in defence really does come down to two things: relationships and relevance. Stu, what's the one piece of advice you'd give to SMEs about building their black book, not just for who they know, but for who knows them?
Crikey, that's a heck of a question to finish off on.
It is, isn't it?
So I think in terms of building that black book, I said earlier, you will have relationships already. You may not know it, but dig into your LinkedIn, dig into the contacts in and around you within your organisation. I've known before family members say, "Oh, I know somebody that works in Bombardier or Thales or whatever."
Yeah.
So there will be an opportunity to get in there, and then start building from there. It's often like a spider's web. You start pulling at one area, and then you start then moving into other areas. So you'll be surprised at how big your black book will get, quite quickly. But there's nothing better than visibility. So we talked a bit about some of the events across the calendar year, and there are many of them that you can attend. We're often out 2-3 days a week going to events and speaking to people. And there's nothing like visibility. People see you all the time. They start to talk to you. They build that relationship. You don't just build a relationship on the first handshake. It takes a lot of meetings to build that credibility and communicate. We're humans. We like to communicate, and we like to understand other people and build those relationships. So building that network is the only real way that you're going to build that intelligence in the sector, and that you will understand what's coming down the pipeline and give you the ability to get ahead of the curve and get ahead of the tender landing. Yeah. I think that was a wrap up to say
it was.
That's how you build your black book.
Yeah, thank you, Stu.
Brilliant.
Okay, so that's it for today's episode of Advance to Contract, where we help SMEs navigate into the defence landscape with clarity, confidence and purpose.
So if you found today's discussion useful, don't forget to subscribe, share it with your network and leave us a review. And if you've got questions or topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes, we'd really like to hear from you. You can download our top tips and resources from the website link in the episode description.
Thank you for listening. And remember, every big contract starts with a single conversation. Until next time, keep advancing.